Welcome, everyone. My name is Jacob. Thank you for joining me. This is Hunt Detail, and I have returned back from a trek west. For over a week, I was in the state of California, of all places. We were about 3.5 hours west of San Francisco at Yosemite National Park. This was a vacation with my family, and it was a really exciting adventure to share with my family. It was difficult at times because of the hiking that we did. I'll talk a little bit more about that. What's interesting is over the past few years, our our vacations have taken on a cadence of going to these national parks and experiencing them not only just from the car or, taking pictures, but really trying to take intense hikes and experiencing maybe a little bit of pain, obviously experiencing the beauty, developing some grit and character along the way, and having some shared suffering, which tends to create great memories. So now my kids may disagree a little bit on that, and that's understandable. They're pretty. Some of these things have gotten more intense, and it's probably the last time for a while that we'll do anything of this nature. Uh, we've gone to Yellowstone, which was great, and we went to Zion National a few years ago and hiked Angel's Landing and the Narrows, and we've gone to Rocky Mountain National Park and done some amazing hikes. And um, last year, I had the great idea of hiking the Grand Canyon, and so we hiked 7 miles down, stayed at the Phantom Ranch, which is a series of cabins, which difficult to get one, and again, a permit needed and all that, reservation needed, and then hiked another trail out, which was 10 miles, and it was pretty intense, but it to me it's sort of invigorating to think about some of those, to do those accomplishments, to come out of that, and as a family, I really feel like those are strong, memorable moments, and but this year we decided to hike well, I shouldn't say I decided that we would hike Half Dome. And if you look at Yosemite, you can Google it. Yosemite has a structure that a lot of folks are familiar with called El Cap or El Capitan, which is a granite structure that Alex Honnold free soloed several years ago. Meaning he climbed that with just his hands and his feet, no cables, no ropes, no nothing, and really, really impressive accomplishment. Something that I would never attempt to do. But another structure there is Half Dome, and he's also free soloed that from the side of where you're climbing it. But you can also hike to the top, and there's a series of cables that you can use to get to the top once you get sort of on top of the subdome. And so it's also difficult to get a permit, like a lot of things in this world today, difficult to get a reservation or whatever. But I was able to get us one, and it was really interesting. I'll tell you, it was 17.7 miles round trip. It was 5,700 feet in elevation gain and then 5,700 feet in elevation loss. So it was really intense. And it takes, like a lot of things that we do, a bit of planning. And we were hiking, I noticed that there were some folks that don't think planned appropriately. And we also saw this in the Grand Canyon. And I bring this up, some of the planning piece, because this is what I tend to talk about on this podcast. It's hunt detail for a reason. It's detail orientedness. And sometimes, and I'll give you some examples. There were folks that, like we had trekking poles. We all had water bladders. Everybody had at least 2 liters of water. And then I had 2 liters of my own water plus eight more liters in a reservoir on my back, because I wanted to make sure that we all had at least 4 liters of water for this trip. We all had snacks, and I had a jet boil and some meals. This was, going to be a long hike. It took us about 13 hours to complete it. So it was a long day. And so wanted to make sure that we had enough fuel to get to the top and back. And even still, there was a slight issue which I'll talk about. But there were people. I saw a woman in Uggs, like the furry boots that have really no support, but they're just furry and they're sort of a fashion thing. She was pretty far up there in a pair of Uggs. I was really impressed. Either these people are just, they might just be plain tougher than I am, quite honestly. They're not, maybe it's a function of they know how to plan for this stuff, but they're like, I'm going to do this in Uggs. I'm going to show these people that this isn't that difficult. I saw a woman in sandals. Now, these were sort of like the Tiva sandals that had the Velcro that strapped pretty secure to your feet, but you really don't want your toes and feet exposed on this hike. And you don't want that sort of rubbing from those straps. There were a lot of folks that did not have trekking poles. We did, of course, but a lot of people that didn't. And I heard a lot of people complaining that they didn't. And then I saw a lot of people just carrying a water bottle. I mean, there's one gentleman that I saw in jeans, no shirt, and a water bottle. And it was almost empty. And you know, and I don't know how far they were going, but no, I saw a lot of people with no backpacks, meaning they had no other food, no other, first aid kit, which I did happen to carry. I had a splint, a tourniquet. I had other things because I thought, if I find someone on the trail that's really in a tough spot, or if my family gets in a tough spot, I want to be prepared. And so, plus, anytime I'm carrying extra weight, for me, I just feel like it's training. It's training for my elk season. So I don't mind carrying extra weight on sort of these trips that we do when we go vacationing or whatever, because to me it's just part of my training. But I think it just when I see folks that aren't prepared, that don't have the right gear or the right planning, I just think about uh, how important. I mean, sometimes I hear this on different podcasts where it's like, hey, folks want to buy all this gear, but they don't know how to hunt or something like that, something to that effect. And my retort to that is that I think folks that are detail oriented about their gear, that are buying nice gear, they probably have a sort of detail orientedness about their hunting as well. Like they're e-scouting, they're planning. I could be wrong, and there could be a lot of people just blowing hundreds and hundreds of dollars on nice gear, but it's certainly not the case with me. I remember not having any nice hunting gear when it was a pair of sweatpants or a pair of jeans covered with a pair of sweatpants, then some a pair of cotton camo pants. So that was my layering system. Or a tree stand with no safety harness, a canteen, and then a single sandwich and a kudos bar. Like that was, and it was an all day set. And, and it was freezing. And I had boots that were a size and a half too small. My feet were crunched up and I had 4 layers of cotton socks. So that's where I come from when it comes to gear and the gear that I choose now. Because I am not, I mean, I will never go back to that. I never can go back to that. That's why I am so focused on gear. I imagine a lot of you all feel similarly. Maybe you had those experiences when you were younger and you were hunting and you had no control or little control over what was available to you to wear when you were, hunting, with your family, your dad or whatever. So, those days. And so that's when I see folks that are doing things in Uggs or sandals, it's like, or just a water bottle or no trekking poles. I'm like, gosh, those poor souls, they haven't thought it out. They haven't planned it out. There's better options. There's ways to be more comfortable. And so, anyways, I just encourage you to continue to dive down these rabbit holes of gear and finding things that work for you, whether it's when you're hunting out west or you're hunting in the east, uh, staying out longer, going farther, that sort of thing. But Yeah, today I just completed and posted on the Hunt Detail channel an examination of broadheads, and I'd done this last year with a couple different broadheads, both fixed and mechanical. Last year it was a Sevr 2.0, a Rage, I know there was a Rage knockoff in there, and then there was the a Muzzy broadhead that was expandable. I think it was called the Trocar. I can't quite remember, but there was a series of videos that I shot looking at broadheads and their ability to penetrate ballistic gel that I had created, and I was measuring that penetration. And really, when you look at it from the standpoint of an expandable broadhead, a lot is made about the fact that with an expandable, there's a loss of kinetic energy because you have these blades that are expanding as they hit. And then you have the great news is you have better, larger cutting diameter, but the bad news is that you have greater drag and a lot because of that greater cutting diameter. And then you have that loss of energy as to force those blades open. And so there's some trade-offs there. And so therefore part of that is a lack of penetration. And so what you would often happen is you hear, well, I'd rather have two holes than one. So with a fixed blade, the penetration is greater because it's cut on contact and you're not losing this kinetic energy that is required to open up that broadhead. So last year I was shooting, it was 4 expandables into this ballistic gel. And it was the Rage No Collar Plus P, which stands for penetration. And so these blades are a little bit more swept back. It was a Sevr Titanium 2.0. It was the Muzzy, I think it was the Trocar. But it has a fixed blade and an expandable portion as well. And then there was an Amazon broadhead. Goes by the name of Keep, Keaup, and it's a Rage knockoff, and ultimately the Sevr 2.0 won this evaluation. And please keep in mind that these videos, when you're looking at, I'll just focus on mine. These are just one data point in one point of time. And when I'm evaluating these are not, it's not to say that this is the be all end all test. It's not to say that that one head is the best, is the best choice for your situation. I'm just doing my own evaluation. I'm sort of sharing those results. And so that video has over 17,000 views and is pretty popular. And this year I wanted to look at a couple different broadheads in the same fashion. These were expandables. They were, I have to think about it. So I had 2 G5 heads. I had the dead meat and the mega meat. And all of these heads are 125 grain. I had the Grim Reaper Whitetail Special. I had 2 Sevr heads. I had the Sevr 2.0 and the Sevr 1.75. And then I had the Rage, the No Collar Plus P that I've mentioned earlier, but I included that into the eval. So we really had 6 broadheads, but 2 of them were from G5 and 2 of them from Sevr, and then you had the Whitetail Special from Grim Reaper, and then the Rage broadhead. And I wanted to look at penetration, but I also, when you think about these broadheads and specifically like the G5 head, so like if you look at the mega meat or the dead meat, that's a 3 blade, or the Whitetail Special as well from Grim Reaper. Those are 3 blade expandables. And so on the surface, of course, those broadheads are not going to penetrate as much as a 2 blade. because you have more to open and you have more blade exposure. So you have more drag as it's going through the ballistic gel or going through the animal. And so I wanted to sort of not even the odds, but just emphasize a dynamic of the broadheads that haven't, if you're only looking at penetration, then you already know sort of who's going to win. And I wanted to look at penetration plus what I deemed called the wound channel ratio. And so that ratio is the length of a single blade multiplied by the number of blades multiplied by the inches in penetration. So if you have, let's say, a 1-inch blade and you have 3 blades, that's 3 multiplied by the inches of penetration. So let's say it was 20 inches. So let's say 3 times 20 equals 60. So that ratio will be, the wound channel ratio is 60. Whereas if something has 2 blades and each of them are 1 inch and the penetration is let's say 25 inches, so 2 times 25 is 50. So the wound channel ratio is 50. So you have something that penetrated more at 25 inches, but the wound channel ratio is lower than the one with 3 blades because the 3 blade had penetrated at 20 inches, but it had 3 blades at 1 inch long that are causing more damage, a greater wound channel. So I hope that makes sense. Now, this is just something that I created out of thin air, just out of my own thought around this. There's no perfect answer or right or wrong answer. And I will say, as it relates to broadheads in general, I shoot mechanical and fixed. And this podcast isn't to get into, which one, or I have both in my quiver. Each one is for a different situation. So in some cases if I want to use an expandable, it might be because of, the fact that it's a longer shot maybe, or if I'm shooting through brush, I might use a fixed because I don't want something to accidentally open up, and I want to just punch it through, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different scenarios, and I'm not going to get into that today, but I did want to share some of the results with you, and I would encourage you to go to the Hunt Detail channel on YouTube, and you can watch the video for yourself. It's only about 8 minutes in length, and I go through the breakdown of each of the broadheads. But I'll share with you some of the results here, and you can, that way you don't even have to watch the video if you don't want. But there's a lot of other videos on the Hunt Detail channel. I encourage you to go to it, like, subscribe. I think you'll find content that you like and of value there. But the dead meat, the G5 dead meat, came in last place. The penetration, as you can imagine, was not great. It was 18.5 inches. And so when you multiply that by the size of the blades, the wound channel ratio came in at 55.5. Within that, you have I'm sorry. Well, yeah, actually, that's right. And so I'm looking at this. The Grim Reaper Whitetail Special, which is different than all of these heads because it's more of a forward opening head. I ranked it number 5, and I may have been a little harsh on that broadhead. I mean, it had decent penetration at 22 inches. It has 3 blades, so the multiplication there is enhanced in terms of that penetration. And but one of the blades didn't open, and so therefore I felt like that was a 5th place head because only 2 of the blades open. And honestly, I don't like that forward opening broadhead. I prefer sort of the rear opening broadhead that you see with the Sevrs or the Rages or even sort of the G5 heads, because they're being sort of pushed open from pressure on the front, so the blades open in the back, as opposed to blades sort of having to be forced open, sort of against the grain, But I do feel like that probably is a fine head. It probably shoots really well for a lot of folks. It's probably killed a lot of deer. It's a really long head, long ferrule, and so you know, the number four head was actually the head that had the highest penetration in inches. So the Sevr 1.75 titanium ferrule, the penetration was 26 and a half inches. I mean, the nearest head, it was 2 inches further than the nearest head, which was the other Sevr that I'll talk about in a minute here. So both of the Sevr heads had the highest penetration in inches of any of the heads in this evaluation. So the Sevr 1.75, 26 and a half inches. The Sevr 2, Titanium 2, 24 and a half inches. And so both of those did really well. But the only problem is they're only two bladed. And so the smaller the blade, the smaller the wound the lower the wound channel ratio is. In turn, the Rage Hypodermic NC, or the Rage No Collar plus P, that had a really, it came in at 24 inches in terms of penetration, very long blades. And so the wound channel ratio was a little bit higher with that head than it was with the Sevr 2, the Sevr 2. And I will note that the Sevr 2, I don't believe that the blades locked out. They opened for sure, and I examined the wound channel, but I don't believe that they locked out. They didn't lock out. And so where that really left us or left me was with the dead meat. I'm sorry, the mega meat. And it's one of those things that, I mean, sometimes brands come out or companies come out with these brands, these marketing campaigns, and I'm just like, oh, I can't stand it. It's sort of a like the antithesis of how I think of hunting. But you know, when they came out with that dead meat promo, and it's like I think it was T-bone, and the blood sort of splats up on him. He's got this chef jacket on or something, this white jacket on or lab coat, I guess. I just was like, oh brother, like this is so corny. And of course, now they have the mega meat, and you know, I think it's a similar campaign. But I can tell you that it really performed well. All the blades open, they all three locked out. They're all very large blades, I believe. Uh, I don't have the measurements in front of me, but I believe over an inch. And the penetration was 21 inches, so really strong penetration. I don't know why the mega meat would over penetrate the dead meat. You know, the mega meat had larger blades. I don't understand that. And that's why I say that this is one data point in one point in time. If you're using the dead meats, it doesn't mean it's a bad head. I saw a lot of people post and tell me how much they like the dead meats or the mega meats on the YouTube channel. And so, and I see a lot of people posting about them online as well, just how much they like those broadheads. So, but the wound channel ratio was by far the greatest with the mega meat. It was 78.75 based on its penetration combined with the length of those blades. And so it really, I mean, I was really impressed with it. And I think I think I know I'm gonna use it this year. I'm gonna shoot some things with it. I don't know if I'm gonna have it in my quiver for elk season or not. Maybe if I get a chance to shoot something with it before I go elk hunting, then I'll get a chance to evaluate it. But um, I do have a fixed blade head for my elk hunt, as well as I'm not afraid to use a mechanical. I just can't decide if I'm going to use maybe the Sevr 1.75, because again, here you have a smaller wound channel, but the penetration was so great with that broadhead that and it locked out, that I can see a scenario if I need a long follow-up shot or just a long shot in general on an elk that's maybe in an opening. I would pull that Sevr 1.75, even though it came in like technically fourth in my evaluation. I highly value that penetration number of 26 and a half inches versus say something that has three blades and has less penetration. And so again, that's why this is not an exact science, and that's why I say that you have to look at your own particular hunting style, hunting needs to determine which head might be for you. So this isn't saying one is not good and one is bad or one is the greatest. So, but I was highly impressed by the mega meat. It's definitely something I'll use for whitetail this year. And again, as it relates to elk, I may go with that Sevr 1.75, or I may do something different. Who knows? But ultimately, it's always fun to discuss these things. It's fun fodder to look at our gear and continue to tweak it, continue to evolve it, continue to get better gear, and to get, so that it helps us be more successful to fill tags, that sort of thing. Obviously, it's not the be all end all, but it's part of what we do. So greatly appreciate your time today. Please like, share, subscribe. That's a really great way to help me out, support me, provide a review for the podcast. Follow it on the Hunt Detail YouTube. Best of luck this season, and look forward to talking with you again soon. All the best.